Good morning, Scott. Uh, good to see you on. Always tracking me. Yeah, we're getting a few. So we're gonna delay. Good morning, Greta. A little bit. It's a couple minutes before the start time. I just wanted to check to see if Saturday morning worked for some folks. I want to give different opportunities so that folks with different schedules can have an opportunity to talk to me and see how Saturday works. I think next week maybe we'll try Thursday. Hope everybody's got a good cup of coffee, and it's been a pretty exciting week. So I'm looking forward to getting started here, and we'll do that in just a moment. It's looking pretty good so far. We got a lot of folks jumping on. This is pretty exciting. Maybe Saturday morning is not too bad. I've got 8:58, so again we'll just give it another couple of minutes. Good morning, Mom. Morning, Alice. This is looking pretty good. We're getting pretty good. That's very kind, Rita. Thank you very much. So Rita Fromm is on. She's from my county, and the county Republican committee has signs in the office. So if anybody is in that area, they can go by the office there, and the Republican Central Committee for Warren County, they can go by the office there and get signs. Okay, 9 o'clock, we're going to get started, so welcome anybody else that signs on. We should have a watch party going on the other channel, and so good morning, everybody. And this is a great day. It's been a great week. We had a lot of opportunities this week, to include the Facebook Live that we did earlier in the week. But I get to say Happy Mother's Day to my mother, who is listening, a day early, but Happy Mother's Day, Mom. And welcome everybody. So here I am. I'm out in my mobile office because the governor has allowed the parks to open up. So I headed out to try to spend a little time in each of the counties. So I'll be moving campsites here every couple of days. And good morning, Tina. And that way I have access to some of the counties. So right now I'm over in Cass County, and if anybody's over in this area, holler at me, stop by and visit, or holler at me and I'll come to your town, and we'll get after a week. So listen, excuse me. Sorry. The other day when we were doing the Facebook Live, I felt like I was being redundant, and yes, I am. We're talking about the same stuff. So feel free to ask the questions, and in that light, I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction that some of you have probably heard, but others might be new on here, and so we're gonna do that real quick. Look, folks, I'm Bill Schaefer. I am seeking the Republican nomination here during this primary process, which has already started and runs through the 2nd of June, where the poll voting, the in-person voting at the polls will happen. And so my background is military. My father joined the Army and spent his life in the Army raising a family. I have 4 siblings, all born in different states. My parents, who are listening, are in Maryland with my little brother and my sister. I met my wife Robin in Maryland about 39 years ago. We've been married 36 years this June, and we have 3 children. One's in Georgia, one's in Arizona, and one is here, but she'll be heading back to Texas to her teaching job pretty soon. And as I said, I joined the Army and spent 32 years in uniform, and then another 4.5 working for the Army as a civilian. So right at 37 years of service to the nation and service to your soldiers as an infantry officer, and then a human resource director. As an infantry officer, I retired as a colonel, and in that last several years, I worked at pretty senior levels. Worked in the Pentagon, providing training briefings to the 4 service chiefs about the funding and the it is a new studio. You like that? About the funding requirements and the in-year execution requirements, emerging training ideas, if you will. And I also commanded a brigade that was responsible for training and readiness for the reserve component, reserves and National Guard soldiers that were deploying overseas. That brigade had about 2,000 soldiers in it, and we trained about 15,000 soldiers a year. And then I went to a 3-star headquarters and was the operations officer, and that headquarters was responsible for all of the training across the continental United States for the Guard and Reserves. And I was the operations officer. Awesome. Great people signing in. Good morning, Misty. Good morning, Chris. And then I was the chief of staff for that general officer, and that is important for you to know, because that gives you an idea of the levels that I worked at, and the experiences that I hope you will see will serve you well if you give me the opportunity to go to Congress for you in terms of problem solving and strategic thinking. But it's also important because, the question comes up, why are you in Iowa? And that's why. We moved around. I moved around my entire life. To this point, the 4 years is about the longest I've been in any particular place. I have been in Iowa for 9 years now, almost 10. And however, I haven't lived in one place there either. But I came to Iowa because the Army said, go to Iowa, and actually technically Illinois, because Rock Island Arsenal is an Illinois address. But I lived in Iowa. And when we retired from the military, the Army hired me, so we stayed. And then we started looking around for long term and decided that we were going to retire to Iowa because we liked it. And that's also why I'm running for office, because I thought of Iowa as a conservative state. I think there's no doubt in my mind from moving through these counties that we are a conservative, self-reliant type of people. Even the Democrats that I've talked to are really self-reliant, conservative-minded in their daily life, and so I'm sure that this is the right thing for me to do right now. Or actually, when I started, based on the leftward swing of the country, and based on these seats, this particular seat being lost to a Democrat. So, that's kind of the background. I wanted to tell you a little bit about the week. It's been a powerful week. We've had the Facebook Live. I had a TV interview with KCCI, Channel 8, I believe it is, on Thursday. It was a recorded session, and I expect that to be aired here in about 7 to 10 days. Hopefully they'll tell me so that I can put it out. But I look forward to all of you seeing that particular interview. And then yesterday I had 5 separate invitations to come out and visit folks. And so, at 9 and 10 and 11 and 12 and 1, it was awesome. And talked to some great people. A couple of them are signed in here, and I'm pretty excited about that. Just a great week of phone calls, folks calling and wanting to talk to me, answering questions, folks getting their ballots and looking us up and contacting me privately and saying, hey, we just got our ballot, we saw your name on it, we're looking you up, and asked me a couple questions, and that's been pretty powerful. And I got to say, it's it's been quite a journey this year of meeting wonderful people, and then knowing that you're actually on the ballot that's a pretty big day, and so there you have it. So, if folks want to start asking questions, please do. We'll get after the topics, and while we're doing that, I'll tell you this high-speed coffee cup I got here. Carried that coffee cup in the Army for 20-something years, you can kind of see. And here it is, still with me, hanging on to my coffee for me. I think we ended last week talking about service limits. I had that conversation a couple times this week, and again, I thank the folks from last Friday night, a week ago Friday, who helped me hone that topic. And we're still got to do the math to figure out the ranges, but I think service limits is a better term than term limits, and our ability to allow our elected folks to go from the House to the Senate makes sense, as long as there is, with that service in both chambers, a cap on the number of years. And so you end up with a range. Because of the offset of Senate terms versus House terms. Oh, another thing I wanted to tell you is I also had the opportunity this week to take some classes with the Heritage Foundation, and they did a wonderful job. They gave me 7 classes over a couple of days, and topics that we've talked about, topics that I have been thinking about, and they provided me a little bit more depth of knowledge. Half-hour, 45-minute classes, but they also sent me a bunch of stuff to read, so I've got stuff to read. They have some things written on the separate topic of national security, the border, and then immigration. And as I talked them through my thoughts on that, they actually have a paper written similar to that, so they're going to send that to me. A lot of stuff for me to study, so it's good. Oh wow, that's awesome. One of our friends just said that her aunt voted in her first primary and cast a vote for me. So thank you, Alice. That's very kind. Yeah, Tina, so I've been asked about thoughts on prescription drug costs, and no, I don't have a in-depth answer on that. It's part of it's certainly part of the healthcare issue, and I can tell you again from a conversation this week with a great Iowan. While it's words, it really matters, and it's a separation of healthcare from the cost of funding your healthcare, as opposed to trying to call insurance, health insurance, or call the insurance industry piece of this healthcare, because it's not. It's how you fund your healthcare. But we've got to do some studying on the prescription drug cost. I can tell you again, I'm not big on the federal government getting involved in the pricing of stuff, and price controls I think is a bad idea, but prescription drugs is certainly an issue. and the cost of prescription drugs and how those drugs are delivered to us. So I apologize for not having an in-depth answer on that yet, but we'll work our way through that, and we'll make sure we have a solid position on prescription drugs and what the expectation of the federal government should be on that. It's all part of the pricing transparency of funding your health care that I think is important. So we'll include that in there. Good morning, Whitney. And Tina, if you have any thoughts on it yourself, please email me or call me separately and help me get a little bit smarter on it. Are you pro-business, small business, entrepreneurship? Wow, I even said that word. That's amazing. Absolutely. If you hear the main message behind, or one of the strongest pieces of the message behind my running for office, is talking about the fact that this is not a democracy. This is a constitutional federal republic. And that's important to your question, or to your point about business, because really the federal government ought to get out of the way. And if the more the federal government got out of the way, the more small business entrepreneurship would thrive. And I think our president has done a good job with deregulation, but I think he needs help, and he needs help. He needs help from the Congress. He needs help from the Congress, and there's not enough true conservatives, and frankly, I'm concerned that some that we've sent, across the country have gotten there, and while they're still conservative, they have, fallen into that compromise mindset that I think is still hurting us. So, I want to get there, and I want to look at deregulation, and deregulation with respect to businesses and small businesses would certainly be on the top of my list of things to do, and help businesses get to thriving. Just on the current events note, I'm really glad to see our state in particular relinquishing on some of the restrictions and letting folks get back to work. I just pray that the businesses have the opportunity to get open and live within the guidelines, which are really a little stronger than just guidelines. I talked to a restaurant owner local that I like to go to, and he hasn't opened yet because he's sorting through the guidelines to figure out, how to execute under the current conditions. So just pray for no spike in this situation we're in to cause us to go back to more restrictions, and we really got to get our businesses going under these conditions. So yes, and Rick, I agree with you. I'm familiar with the border issues with medical insurance, and I agree that's something that's got to be fixed. Patrick asked me, how do I feel about constitutional carry? Absolutely for it. And the Constitution already says that the individuals of states should enjoy the rights and privileges of the other states when they are in those states. And so, to me, just on a concealed carry with a permit from one state, another state shouldn't be, in my mind, they shouldn't be able to deny that. But those are the conditions we're under. So a national concealed carry or a constitutional carry. And constitutional carry makes the most sense because really, when you boil it down, a concealed carry permit is just a tax, and why are we being taxed to carry our firearms? I don't agree with that. So, Patrick, I hope that's clear enough for you. I absolutely believe in constitutional carry, but knowing that will be hard to sell, I think a national concealed carry permit would be maybe the next best thing to protect you when you're crossing state lines and still trying to protect yourself and your family. Yeah. So what is your stance on Common Core, and what are the opportunities do you foresee regarding the education reform? You know, I think there is an opportunity. Now, again, my starting position on education reform would be to get rid of the Department of Education at the federal level. Don't believe the federal government should be um, directing the education requirements. I think that can be handled by the state and by private schools. And I really appreciate the question, because again, it's just an opportunity to emphasize the constitutional federal republic. Maybe a very reduced Department of Education at the federal level could look at forecasting education requirements in the long term, 5 to 10 year forecasts, and provide that to the states or to the education, the school districts at any level, as a tool, a guideline tool that says, here's some things the country would need. We encourage you to go down these lines. I don't think Common Core works, and you can see it wouldn't fit in the construct I'm talking about. So I guess there's your answer on Common Core. But we absolutely have to get, I think, the federal government out of the funding of schools, because I think at the college level. Okay, somebody text me and tell me if they're getting anything. My computer says my video is off, and that's not good. Okay, thank you guys. I apologize. I am not seeing it, so it's kind of disturbing. So I'm getting some notes saying I'm still on, so I'm going to keep rolling, and would ask that somebody text me. I'm going to get my phone closer if it does shut off. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, guys. Okay, so we're back on the roll. So back on to education. Thank you, Misty. And I was getting to the point where, the federal government funding by grants and loans is one of the main reasons why college level prices have inflated so drastically. But it also is why we have education requirements, curriculum, and directed things, because if the school systems don't do those things, money can get withheld, and that's the way that works, and it's really bad. I'm sorry, go back up so I don't miss that question. So I want to get that stopped, and I'm going to work very hard on that. And you put the two things together, and what it means is thank you. And what it means is, no, I'm not for Common Core. Absolutely want to get the federal government as far out of the education business as I can, and create a situation, whether it's K through 12 or college, where you, the consumer, as a parent or the child, depending on how old it is, and in college and all that, but you become a consumer of a product, and the schools become a business that's delivering you a product, and I think that's the way to improve education in a short summary type of thing. Okay. What would you advise the president on the states that continue to infringe more on the citizens' rights? Yeah, listen, the president, I don't believe, is in a position of authority to tell the states what to do. And so I think what the AG is doing, opining that he thinks there's some overreach, and kind of foreshadowing the possibility of the Department of Justice getting involved, and then making it a kind of a court issue. I think that's the right answer. So from the president's desk, he should stick with guidance, and he should encourage the governors to make changes. Really, when he put out the phase plan and said, here's a phase plan for reopening your economy. And you probably all know he got beat up for supposedly rebuking the Georgia governor. He really didn't, if you heard what he said. What he said was, I encourage the governor to follow the phase plan, but the governor is making his decisions for his state. And that he's praised other governors for following the phase plan. So because he doesn't like what's going on in Michigan or California, he should still take, from a leadership point of view, he should still take the same approach and give them guidance. And in the end, it becomes a constitutional legal issue, and the folks of those states are going to have to take their action through the courts and hopefully get a rightful constitutional decision on it. So that's the way I see the president. Okay, everybody's telling me I'm on. I got that little bit of delay, so by the time I asked, I got about 100 answers. Thanks to everybody. And okay, good. You're working, you're on, video and audio fine. Everybody's helping me. And then I got crazy notes down here. Okay, so let me see if I missed any questions up here. Annalisa, I'm glad you got your answer. We talked Constitution. Okay, I'm caught up again. And looking for a new topic. So whenever I have these pauses, I again remind you, thank you. I remind you that I love to get invitations. I have found throughout the year that invitations by folks to come speak to them at little events of a couple of people or larger events, 10 or 15 or even 100 a couple of times, are much more powerful than just showing up and saying, here I am, I want to talk to people. And so please, if you want me to come to your county or your town and talk to folks, just private message me, call me. I'll put out my phone number now and at the end, 515-850-8100. And that is my phone, and I would love to come see anybody. We've got 3 weeks. Folks are already voting, and so every opportunity right now is a powerful opportunity to get that exponential vote. If every one of you can take the opportunity, if you've studied me, if you haven't, please go study on me, study on my challenger for the Republican nomination, and make your decision. I hope you decide me, but what I really want and what we really need, we need us. I like to say we the people. Somebody asked me what I meant by that on Facebook the other day. Of course, I mean us. In our case, I mean, every voter in District 3 needs to go to the primary and pick their candidate and not be told by the party, whether it's the Democrat or the Republican Party, who your candidate's going to be. So please study on them, and then when you make your decision, if you decide it's me, for us to beat the party, we need exponential contact. I need every one of you to take the time to talk to your family and friends and increase the potential of primary voters coming out and selecting this candidacy, this campaign. So thank you very much. Let's see, we got that one. Okay, so we got through that one more time. And I think before, when the video went out, I was telling you about the Heritage Foundation, and they've made themselves available. So actually, any of these topics, the topic I was asked earlier on prescription drugs, I'm sure I can get some more information from them. So they've been a very big help. Yeah, food supply chain, as we see now, has a weak link. No, it clearly has a weak link. As a guy that spent his life in the infantry, I don't know all the steps in that food chain, but I certainly understand logistics, and I understand the complexities of the entire logistics chain from a military viewpoint, but it's still very complex. And of course, with the private sector, it becomes more complex because now you're talking about each step in the phase, each step in the chain having money associated. You probably can all hear my dog. He's down there looking at me, shaking like labs do. Tail's gonna whack me, but he's asking me why we're not going for our walk yet. Anyway, it definitely has a weak link, and but I think one of those weak links, it appears to me, is the supply source, the beginning of the chain, if you will, and hopefully we're going to see some corrections in that, especially in prescription drugs, by the way. Your opponent seems to be getting meetings with officials who endorsed him. Have you been invited to any of these meetings? No, I haven't been invited by any of them. I have asked two in particular to give me audience and talk to me about Iowa politics, but no, I haven't been invited, and that's fine. He can get all those endorsements he wants. You know, I published a list of endorsements the other day, and it was you. It was many of you, and I thank you all for participating in that. You know, it wasn't a huge list, but we built that list in about 24 hours just as a point to make to all of the Iowans in this district that, okay, great, so politicians are endorsing the politician. That's fine. That's the people he worked with. You know, I worked in the military. I've got some general officer endorsements. That's our credentials. His credential is politics, and his endorsements are politicians. My credentials are the military. I've got general officer endorsements. I've got your endorsement, the people of Iowa, which to me, as a man who wants to serve you, that's much more powerful. And you know, if we have to get more, we can get more. But any of you were to go to again on Facebook and say that you're interested in this campaign, that's another way for us to exponentially overcome those political endorsements, and that's I think the best way to look at it. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, Annalisa, I agree. I mean, American products, that is part of the answer. That's part of the answer to the supply chain and fixing that first step. You know, I don't know that, you know, we don't want to withdraw from the world completely, but so another answer is to try to cause the supply source to be spread out a little bit more around the world, as opposed to the apparent reliance we had on China for so many products. So I think we're heading in that direction, or will be heading in that direction, I should say. And based on some of the language that the president is using, and for me, it fits right into that America First agenda, which, you know, that's one of the biggest reasons why I'm a President Trump supporter, because the America First agenda, it just rings with me. It makes sense to me. That we prioritize our country, as other countries should prioritize themselves. But, you know, we haven't been doing that. Our politicians have not been prioritizing this country. We've been getting, you know, bad deals or maybe good enough deals over years and years and years, and the balance wasn't right. And here we are. The result is we're dependent on too much from one source, and that is probably one of the best lessons we've learned from this whole COVID thing. Thank you, Bill Scott. Yeah, Aaron, I know that Mr. Hansen and I are connected on Twitter. We talk occasionally. We've talked on the phone once, I think. But he seems like a good guy, and I wish him the very best as he moves through the challenges. And again, as you noted, he's having the same challenges. Yeah, so I'm being asked about wind energy, and I see what I'm hearing is there's really two different parts to that issue. One of them is the subsidies associated with wind energy or any other government-supported project, and that I'm completely against. the subsidies. I mean, the federal government, by our Constitution, has a role in promoting the sciences, and that's good. They should do that, but that should be, in my view, in the research, not in the subsidizing of an industry. The industry ought to be able to provide its product and be able to sell its product on its own merits, or not. So that's part of it. The other part, I hear a little bit about the aesthetics of it, and I don't have such a strong opinion on that. I mean, if wind energy works in a particular area, the towers are just another part of the landscape. But I can see why it bothers locals, and I think those are the folks that have to work with their state and local representatives to figure out the right way to deal with that in those counties. Now, the disposal, I guess, is actually a third issue there, and I got to study more on that, but that sounds like a pretty large issue, and it would appear to me we need a better solution than what I understand the solution is. But I got to learn more about the disposal of the blades and things when they do replacements, so that we can understand that better. I hope that gets after most of the topic of wind energy. Yeah, I agree, Annalisa, and I'm hopeful we're going to fix that. Yeah, how do you feel about China taking our money we send for goods and then buying companies? I don't like it. I don't know what to do about it. Do we want the federal government to get involved in who's buying property? And I got to say, on that particular topic, part of me is saying yes from a national security point of view. Maybe we should, but then on the other part of me is, well, if I've got something I want to sell, do I want the federal government in my way? So certainly a complex topic, but I do not like it. And you're actually talking about the companies around the world where the company may not even be here, and that's an even bigger challenge. So it's something that has to be studied, certainly in the intel community, so that we can understand what level of national security issue it is. Kevin, I'm not sure if you mean if the wind energy is or is not self-sustaining. From what I understand, it really isn't, but we'll have to see. What are your thoughts on the huge trillions of dollars of debt the U.S. is racking up with the economic shutdown? Well, thank you, Julie. I'm a balanced budget guy. Those of you that have been on, you've heard me talk about the need to balance the budget, and the pushback I get because it's hard, and that's okay. Hard is okay. We're going to work on that because it's important. Well, this shutdown has made that even more complex because we have, whether we agree with the shutdowns or not, we are where we are. We have allowed the government to shut down so much of our economy at the state and the federal level that we have folks struggling, businesses specifically, small businesses that we were talking about earlier, and that's a big deal. And so now we, our elected representatives, have created a stimulus bill, and it made sense to create a stimulus bill for an economic disaster an economic issue created by a disaster, whether it was a hurricane or a fire, or in this case a virus. You support this. You try to support the stimulus to help your neighbor and your friends out, so that nobody goes bankrupt and businesses can get going again and all that. But then our elected folks fail us by adding all these other things on, and then causing that stimulus to be, who knows how many times, multiple times over what it probably needed to be. Certainly over what it should have been, but even what it needed to be, and it's kind of crazy. So I'm certainly very concerned about it, and it's going to make that balanced budget, and you have to balance the budget in order to get after the debt. you know, we all do it with our own budgets. You know, if you can't balance your budget, then you have nothing to pay down the debt. So, very concerned with that, and wow, they really have added to it with this economic issue, and obviously it's exasperated by the stimulus being put onto the debt while the economy is shut down. So we're not even producing the GDP that's normal for the United States. Obviously, isn't happening right now. So, yeah. Yeah, I agree, Rick. That's why I'm not. And not only do subsidies allow manufacturers to increase the prices and profits, I've seen that in government contracting with the Department of Defense, where contract prices can go up, and a lot of times it works because it's being funded by taxpayer dollars, and so there's not a bottom line. Half of the equation isn't trying to make a profit, and so can make decisions that they wouldn't necessarily make if they were using private money. It also allows that particular industry to have an advantage, and so maybe like we should have with welfare, maybe a phased out approach where the subsidy, helped them get startup for a couple of months or something, but all in all, the subsidies, I think, need to be taken out of these industries, and they can either succeed or fail on their own. You can't tax or pay for the Green New Deal or any of these other good ideas. The technology is either going to work or it's not. The incentive is to develop the next new product that can then get sold on the market, and folks will buy it. It'll be fun. So yes. Yeah. Annalise asked me how I would deal with the crazy liberal left. They're globalists, the opposite. Absolutely. But you know what? It's not just the left. It's the progressive politicians, and we have a lot of them at the federal level. I mean, I think we have some at the state level, but I'm trying to help you at the federal level. So we'll stick our conversation there for the moment. I do believe that the left is kind of crazy using that term. I believe that our political landscape has shifted so far to the left that we have Republicans right now that 50 years ago would have been Democrats by their ideology, by their stance, by their progressive nature. And what I mean when I say progressive nature is the idea that, first of all, the federal government should have an answer for every topic you ask them. You're going to find that you're going to ask me topics that, and I'm going to tell you, as your federal representative, I don't have an opinion. As an Iowan, here's my opinion, and this is what I think you and I ought to do with our state representative and governor to encourage the direction of that particular topic. So the way I will deal with them as you just described is once I get into Washington, I will find one conservative at a time until I have a little bit of a coalition in the House, and then I'll work the Senate, and I'll start with the Republicans. And once I have enough folks working with me on a particular topic, then I'll start reeling in the Democrats. And the way I'll do that, similar to what I've been trying to do across our district when I have the opportunity to talk to Democrats and Libertarians, is talk about the constitutional federal republic we're supposed to be. And I am confident in telling you that I will find Democrats and progressive Republicans that see the logic of the constitutional federal republic argument, and we won't even argue about a topic. We won't argue about what policy we should be taking on a particular issue, because we're going to agree on who owns it, and then we're gonna then try to build that coalition to push that topic back to the state. So that's the way I think it should be done, and I believe that we can even do that on topics that belong at the federal level, like border security and like balanced budget. I got to believe there's enough people up there that are willing, and if there's not, then we the people need to keep putting people in and keep encouraging our sister states and everybody to keep putting people in and not give up. Somebody asked me the other day, well, okay, great, you didn't change I asked you the question 4 different ways and you stuck with your answer, and I'm really pleased with that. But so if we send you to Washington, you're going to be, one of 300 trying to work on a problem. And my answer to that was, if you don't send me, then there's going to be 301 still thinking the progressive way. So let's start with 1 and let's keep moving that forward. We tried it with the president. Let's try to do that in the Congress, and frankly in the Senate too. While the R's have the Senate, there's not enough solid conservative thought in the Senate either to trust all the time. Yes, yeah, Kevin, we're spot on. Business has to be self-sustaining, and they can get help. That's right, they can get help, but not a subsidy. That's in the long term. That can't be good for the economy, and it's certainly not good for a particular industry, for anybody except for the one getting it. Okay, we're caught up again. This has been another powerful morning. I can't see the number signed in anymore because my video is still out. I'm sure glad y'all are seeing and hearing it. Thought for a minute there I thought I had a bust of a morning because I moved out here to try to get out into the county. So it's all good. Some great questions this morning. Thank you. Yeah, I know there's a slight delay, but maybe we could field just a couple more questions, and then everybody can get back to their Saturday. Jack gave up on me; he laid back down. But as soon as I move, he'll be up. That tail will be whacking the walls, waiting to get out the door. That's funny, because I took my hero out for a little while, but he's ready for his long walk. He usually gets several miles with me every morning. I'm still an old Army guy, but he didn't get that this morning. Yeah, Robert asked me how I would cut federal spending and what programs would I cut. I can give you an idea. I already talked to you about the Department of Education. I think could be cut. I believe that the poor Jack. I believe that the Environmental Protection Agency could be cut. But using those as an example, here's the answer to your question on how to cut federal spending. And like everything, part of it requires an education. We gotta stop allowing the politicians and the media to spin things in different ways and make people believe things that aren't true. For example, factually, the Department of Defense is the first main reason we have a federal republic, and that is a responsibility of the federal government. It needs to be funded. The Department of Defense has got work to do with respect to wasted money and certainly fraud, and they do a pretty good job policing up the fraud. I think there's a lot of reform that can be done to police up the waste, but that's got to be funded. And what they're telling you right now is that's a big chunk of the budget, and it's really not. It's according to the statistics I saw with the Heritage Foundation the other day, even if you take the VA and the active Army and all of the programs associated with those two pieces, it's still only about 15%. So the vast majority of our budget goes to entitlement spending, and that's where you got to work. And so the way to answer your question, I believe, is, again, we go back to our well-used document here, and we determine what the federal government should or shouldn't be involved in. Then we prioritize all those programs, and then we forecast. We cause the Office of Management and Budget to forecast revenues, which they do, based on known revenue streams, whether it's your gas tax or your personal income tax or the business tax, and all those income streams that we allow the federal government to have from us. And you prioritize, you place the money against the prioritized spending, and you fully fund the main programs like the Department of Defense, and you partially fund some other programs, and eventually you run out of budget money. And by the way, we need to put some in an emergency fund so that we can pay, we have a more immediate method of actually paying for a disaster like this. It may not be enough to cover a whole disaster, but we can do predictive analysis on hurricanes and fires and have some federal money sitting there to help with those issues. So you prioritize the federal spending against the revenue streams and the Constitution, and eventually you draw a line. You say those programs aren't going to be budgeted for, and you push them back to the states. That's what has to be done. I don't know all the programs, but I gave you. I do believe there can be reforms to Social Security to cause it to be more solvent and less expensive. I do believe there's reforms that can happen with Medicare, Medicaid. Absolutely can be reforms. I mean, frankly, why is the federal government involved in welfare type of spending? It just doesn't make sense to me. So we'll work on all those things, prioritize the programs against the budget, and then we also look at the executive branch and things like the Department of Education, the Environmental Protection Agency, and other agencies. And the first question is, why do we have that agency in the executive branch? And we try to make cuts there. So hopefully that answers your question. In office, shortly after being in office, I will have a prioritized list that details out where the money is going and where I think the cuts should be happening. Do you think AG Barr should get involved in the states that are continuing a shelter in place? Yes, I think the people of those states have to be first. They have to peaceably protest or peaceably address their governors and I'll tell you, one of the questions that I would be asking, I would be going to my state legislator and asking, well, why aren't you involved in this yet? I mean, we've allowed the governors to make the decisions because it's an emergency. Well, the emergency is a couple months old now, so why are your state legislators not involved in encouraging the decision making? But it's got to start with the people, and then I think there is a point where A.G. Barr, and he's already, I think, done some of it. He hasn't gotten directly involved, but he has, through his words, he's foreshadowed the potential that these governors need to make adjustments pretty quick. So we'll see. The establishment media is propping up my opponent, saying that he now has a backbone. I don't know. I don't think what I say necessarily matters. I would ask all of you a question. Do you believe it? Do you believe that the fellow that lost the seat, has middle of the road kind of viewpoints on most things? Do you think he's changed? And if you don't, then get on this team and get all your friends on this team. I think it's a great question. I mean, they prop him up because he's got money too. Well, he's got party money. That's fine. Again, but I've got Iowa citizens, and Iowans ought to be the ones picking this seat. So the media can do what they do. They are not going to beat you. I just know it. Yeah, what do you think of electronic tracking of U.S. citizens that might have had been exposed to COVID? Hey, I'm not for it. I don't know what we can do to stop it. I mean, our phones are already being tracked. You can tell by the ads you get. But no, I'm not for it, and I will fight against any government-directed tracking of U.S. citizens, wiretapping of U.S. citizens, all those kind of things. I'm not in support of that. Alice, do you think Social Security and Medicare are entitlements? Well, they are by definition entitlements in the funding definitions. But no, if you're paying into something, it's not an entitlement. It's you have paid into it. So we absolutely cannot cut those programs, but we can reform those programs and maybe have opt-in, opt-out pieces to it, and certainly grandfathered. So those of us, you would have to do it in blocks, in age chunks. You could you go back to a certain age, and while they stay in Social Security, maybe their retirement age goes up a little bit. But if you're 60 or above, I think there should be no change to your Social Security because you're fully vested into it. And even if you're younger than 60, if you're fully vested, it shouldn't change for you. But clearly, over time, we got to change it. So the direct answer is no. They are not entitlement spending like a welfare program is, because you have spent your life paying into them. Thank you for that question. That's always important to make sure it's very clear to folks. We should get rid of taxes. If you're talking about income tax, I think that would be great to go to a different kind of system, but probably not a tenable position. And so what we need to look at is a fair tax. And I've been studying on that to decide which fair tax I like, whether it's a flat tax or a sales tax. We'll figure that out. And the basis of any tax that we're paying, though, is that everybody has to be paying into it, no matter their source of income, and frankly, no matter how much their income is. We need folks, be invested in the country. Yeah, listen. Looking beyond the 2nd of June, the Democrat opponent has millions in funding, and how will I beat her? Listen, again, you're going to beat her. I'm going to go out and I'm going to walk these towns like I was doing before the shutdown stuff. I'm going to talk to everybody that I can in the 16 counties, and I'm going to ask them, just like I've been asking you, to help me. And whether we get millions of dollars in backing or not isn't going to matter. We're going to do the work. We're going to convince folks. I'm going to convince folks that I am what I'm telling you I am, and I'm not going to change. I'm not going to create a persona. I'm not going to become a politician. I'm going to go there and serve. And I am very confident, just from my experience trying to earn this nomination, that we will bring independents and libertarians and some Democrats along as we talk about the future of this country as a federal republic. And if we don't make some changes, we're going to go too far and lose the federal republic. And once we do that, we've lost our freedoms. And that wonderful document that codifies our God-given rights, our God-given freedoms, and then the Constitution that protects it will be meaningless. If we lose the federal republic, they'll be meaningless. We'll be run by globalists at that point. So those are things we got to fight about. I think a lot of that message will resonate with a lot of people, and I'm very confident that we will remove Cindy Axne here in the fall. Yeah, I agree. Too many rhinos and or progressive politicians. That's what I think we don't want. I think that's, in the primary, I think that's one of the main distinctions. It's you have a politician and you have a not politician. Who do you want? I can only tell you my problem-solving skills and ask you to have confidence in it, but once I'm there, I will demonstrate them to you. what state legislators have I reached out to for support? Listen, I don't want to name the state legislators. There is two. I can tell you there are two that are helping me, and they've been very kind and provided me a lot of information. But I think that they should choose to put their name out on the public forum. I can also tell you I've reached out to several more who, well, they were kind and professional, but clearly weren't going to go out on a limb and back, and then others have actually endorsed our opponent. So anyway, I would prefer to let the politicians decide whether or not they're going to put the name on the table. I agree. Actually, we're getting more than double tax. And a lot of folks, I think, don't understand how many taxes they pay. Every fine, every license you buy, those are all taxes, and they all need to be looked at. So, comprehensive look at the revenue streams going into the federal government. And just like I asked the question, why do we want the federal government involved in a topic? I think that's another question we should ask. Why do we want the federal government involved in drawing revenue from a particular topic, like licensing and certain industries and the like? So we will definitely work on that. And Keep America Great is absolutely the America First agenda. Is why we need to do this. We need to do this now. Yes. So listen, folks, like I do each time, I think we're right at an hour. I'm happy to continue to answer questions, so if some pop up, I'll drive. But I'm going to start wrapping it up this week. Again, I appreciate all the input from everybody. I relish input. If you send me emails, I promise you, if you send me something to read, I will read it. You reference me to particular articles or sources for a topic that's of concern to you. We've got time before the actual swearing in January, but between now and then, input on like what the programs that could be cut and stuff, all the topics. It's all good. So listen, thank you very much. Appreciate all your input on this forum and your willingness to sign in. I don't know that there's a perfect day, so like next week I may try a different day. Look for the posts, and I'll do a better job of getting it out this week. I got it out a little late because no excuse. I just got it out a little late this week, and my normal friends who repost it didn't have a chance. So we'll go back and check missed question about Massey. I don't know what that means, but I'll look for it and I'll put something out in writing unless somebody can rewrite that question for me real quick. If you met Misty, let me see. Keep up the good work. Thanks for running. I do see Misty asked me a question when I was having trouble on universal income. That's a non-starter. Federal level universal income in general, that's a political talking point to garner votes. I don't believe in any policy whose main purpose is to garner votes. So that's the answer to that. Listen, I appreciate each and every one of you signing in and being interested in my campaign. I look forward to having the opportunity to serve you and having you help deliver this primary to us. I've said, and I mean it very sincerely, I'm not important in this endeavor. Each of you are important, as are the rest of your countrymen in the other districts and the other states. And we need to course correct this country, and we can't do it. We can't do it with politicians. So thank you very much. Again, I'm out. With the lifted of some restrictions, I'm out here. So private message me if you have a place you want me to come. talk. I'm over in the Cass County area right now, and but I'll come anywhere if you talk to me on the private message. So thank you again. God bless each and every one of you and your families. Stay safe. Protect your families from this current issue, and continue to encourage our state to open up and get our economy flowing so we can get after that debt and deficit problem. Signing off now, and I'll get some posts out today on yesterday's events, and we will see you in a couple of days. Have a wonderful day.